Chrystia Freeland just said potentially one of the most daft things I've ever heard her say, and considering her history of unhinged, crazy statements, that's saying a lot. When I heard her say this, I spit the water out of my mouth. I could not believe somebody would have the audacity, the nerve to say something so dumb in a public setting like that and think this is good. It shows where our government's mindset is. They are not looking out for Canadians. They only care about their stupid platforms, which we don't care about. They're doing it for their own egos. They are out of touch with reality. It's incredibly frustrating. So much so that one of the other videos that I'm covering in today's video is how we have record levels of anger among Canadians. I wonder why that is. Before we get into that, we have a quick little news update about one of the stories I covered in another video with the Najjar case. Let's dive into it. We got some big stuff today.
The three men accused of gunning down Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar are expected to appear in Surrey Provincial Court via video Tuesday. 22-year-olds Karn Brar and Kamalpreet Singh and 28-year-old Karnpreet Singh were detained in custody Saturday after appearing before a BC Justice of the Peace following their arrests in Edmonton.
There's, I would say, unprecedented and complicated security concerns on three different fronts. And I'm talking James Bond, spy, thriller type stuff.
Allegations of Indian gang ties, concerns about possible reprisal between supporters of an independent Sikh state in India and those linked to the suspects, and the wild card, says former prosecutor Rob Danu, the allegation the government of India is behind the entire plot.
The only way that this is able to happen in Canada is because of the unprecedented levels of unchecked immigration that we are experiencing right now. You can't get away with this stuff when there's not a fugazi going on of, oh, we can't track this person, we can't track this person. Our doors are open right now. We're letting in everybody. The actual government of India is bringing over criminals to commit crimes on their behalf, to take out foreign state supporters. We have enough people from this foreign state that they've fled India and they support their foreign state in Canada, and somehow we're supposed to just think that's okay?
It's really uncharted territory, and it will require significant coordination between corrections, RCMP, CSIS, and maybe even foreign state actors such as the FBI and the CIA.
The three suspects, Indian nationals, are charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder.
The Rajasthan police are...
So those who don't know, Nijjar was assassinated outside of his Gurdwara, and they found him. He's part of the Khalistani movement, supposedly. These are all allegations. And those guys, there's another video on it a couple days ago. How were they in Canada? That's the very interesting thing.
Arrested 3 members of the Lawrence Bishnoi gang.
Sources say the alleged hitmen are linked to India's notorious Bishnoi gang, and at least 2 came to Canada on student visas.
How come they were...
Student visas. What have we been having a problem with for the last 2 years? Is it maybe the abuse in the student visas?
Given police clearance and issued Indian passport to travel to Canada. Were there any police check on their criminality back home? So that is also a question needs to be addressed, need to be asked.
The federal immigration minister says he can't confirm whether the 3 accused were here on student visas.
There's information I just can't share with you at this time. This is an ongoing police investigation, and those questions reside properly with the RCMP or Minister LeBlanc.
Generally speaking, if someone were on a student visa, would there be criminal record checks?
Yes.
There would be?
Yeah.
And then how does that process work?
You check them, and if they have a criminal record, they don't come in.
The BC Crown Council Association says large crowds are expected at the Surrey courthouse for the suspect's appearance, but security has things under control.
Can't tell us if they were on student visas or not. That's nonsense. They obviously want to protect the status because they know, oh, once the story blows over, we'll kind of sneak out that information that they were. It's clearly being abused. Incredibly frustrating. For as frustrating as that is, it's nowhere near as frustrating as this Chrystia Freeland story we're about to see. I have to play a little bit before so you get context for what she's saying. It's nuts.
On the oil and gas cap, Mr. Wilkinson, you could probably handle this. I'm sure you read that letter from the group of scientists who are calling on your government to not just implement the oil and gas cap, but to make sure it comes into effect before 2025 at the latest. For that to happen, we'd need to see draft regulations by this summer. Your colleague, Minister Guilbeault said we won't see draft regulations until fall of this year. We were supposed to see them by the midpoint of this year. So I guess what is your response to that? And also, are you gambling with such an important piece of climate policy if you keep kicking it down the road further and further and further to the point where it might be left to another government to implement?
Hey, are you worried about the climate policy that will crush the Canadian dollar, crush our productivity? It's one of our last few remaining resource sectors that we're able to focus on and provide for Canada a little bit. Are you worried if you let another government take over, they won't crush it fast enough?
Well, I would say a couple things. I mean, it is an important policy item, and certainly it will be important legislation. We are working as quickly as we can to move it forward. But with something as complex as this, you want to make sure that you get it right. And so we have spent time trying to ensure that we are getting it right. I can't tell you exactly when the legislation will come forward, but certainly we are endeavoring to move as quickly as we possibly can. It certainly would be ideal if it was actually in place before the next election. But,
because you're going to lose.
I can't commit to that today. But what I would say is the future of the oil and gas cap, just like the future of most elements of Canada's highly successful climate plan, are going to be contingent on having a government in power in this country that actually believes in climate change and believes in fighting climate change. And I would tell you the track record of Mr. Poilievre is awful in that regard, not only when he was a member of the Harper cabinet that did nothing to address climate change, but it's not something he ever talks about. Canadians are
maybe that's because Canadians can't feed themselves.
Going to have a choice whether it's in law or it's going towards being in law. They will have a choice, and those that value climate change, it's not Mr. Poilievre.
And can I just add one sentence to what Jonathan said? I just very quickly just want to say, I think it's really important to emphasize that.
Get ready for this.
In 2024. It is just not possible to have an effective economic plan that does not also include an effective climate plan. That is simply the economic reality today. The investments that Canada is attracting today are coming to Canada in large part because foreign investors recognize that we have a price on pollution and we have a strong climate plan. And that
she's talking about the carbon tax. She's saying that companies are coming to Canada because we have a price on pollution. Because we have the carbon tax, you think companies want to come to Canada? Because we have the carbon tax? I am so heated from this. It's because of this out of touch statement. She's destroying Canada every step of the way and has the audacity to say companies are coming to Canada because of the carbon tax.
That means they want to be here and make stuff here in Canada and create good jobs here in Canada, because the world, global markets, increasingly are not tolerant of things that are produced in an economy that is not underpinned by strong climate action. And so that's a really important part of what Jonathan has just been saying.
Yeah, surely they're not going to go to some other country, ship the jobs over there where they're not charging carbon taxes, where they're not worried about climate change, where they are going to make things way worse, probably use child labor. This statement, I'm not joking, is one of the dumbest things that I think I've possibly heard her say. To say that countries are going to come here and want to invest in Canada and that you can only be competitive because we have the environmental policies in our economy. No, they want to avoid Canada. The fact that she said this and had the audacity shows how out of touch she is. You're a laughingstock globally. People laugh at you guys like it's crazy. Speaking of angry, let's get into this video where we talk about how Canadians have record levels of anger. Before we get into that, I'm a real estate agent in London, Ontario. If you want to work with my team or anybody across Canada, reach out to me in the link below. We'll hand select somebody in your area. Let's talk about the record levels of anger that we are dealing with, and some of the reasons are quite obvious.
Welcome back to Canada Tonight. If you've been seeing red lately, you're not alone. Pollara has released its latest Rage Index survey. The pollster says that it hit a new high in April with record levels of anger among Canadians. Now, the Rage Index measures Canadians' anger or annoyance toward 6 factors: the federal government, their provincial government, the economy, personal financial situations, certain changes happening in Canada, and the latest stories that are in the news. Dan joins us from Ottawa. Dan, good to talk to you.
I'm happy to be here. I'm not angry today. I'm happy to be talking to you.
Well, I'm thrilled to be talking to you and hearing your voice now. You've been tracking Canadians' rage for almost 2 years. How has the recent round of results differed from what you've seen before?
Well, I mean, we'll cut to the chase. It's a record high on the Rage Index. This is something we've been asking for some time. We ask 6 questions: how you feel about government, how you feel about the economy, stories in the news, and we just average together the percentage of people that are angry about all these things.
What coincidental thing is happening right now that has people so angry with the economy, with the government, with management? Does it have anything to do with people being taxed essentially to death? The carbon taxes, these crazy environmental policies?
And, in the April edition of the Rage Index, we saw a record number of people that were angry about the economy in Canada, record number of people that were angry about government, both federally and provincially. And I think this probably all ties together. If you're upset about the economy, you're looking for someone to blame, and there's lots of blame going around these days.
So who's the angriest? Where are we going to find the most angry Canadians? What province?
Well, Ontario tops the list, and this was fielded before the Leafs went out of the playoffs too, so maybe even angrier today than they were last week when we were actually doing the survey. But yeah, Ontario actually moving into number 1 spot. Alberta has generally been at the top of the list, probably because there's a lot of anger towards the federal government there. But Ontario, we're seeing a lot of economic frustration these days. I think this is driven by things like high housing prices and high grocery prices, which are affecting everybody, but maybe a bit more acute in Ontario than some other places.
Which province has the highest record of immigration as well?
I mean, affordability-wise, I'd argue BC, Vancouver feels pretty unaffordable. Why isn't Vancouver a little higher, given the price of things here? And I'm coming to the audience from Vancouver, the price of housing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it comes down to how people feel themselves, right? And maybe people are more used to some of these factors there. Maybe things feel like they're changing quicker in Ontario. Maybe they're just in a better mood, because I mean, honestly, like whether or not you're feeling angry or happy could depend on the weather, it could depend on many other things. And there is this kind of stigma people have of being a little more laid back on the West Coast. Maybe there's some truth to that, and maybe there just is a bit less frustration there at this time of the year when it's lovely in Vancouver.
It's fair. It is pretty sunny and nice out here, at least today. Alberta used to be the angriest, but you say Ontario took over. Do you have a sense as to exactly why that would have happened?
It's hard to say what the specific cause is. Like as I said, it seems like there's a lot more economic frustration bubbling up in Ontario these days. One thing that we did see, speaking of BC, you're asking about here, is a pretty big jump in terms of the level of anger towards the provincial government in BC compared to past waves.
Does it have anything to do with the extremely horrible drug program that destroyed parks and had a massive impact in community in an extremely short time? Maybe.
This is something that for the past year and a half, anger towards the provincial government's always been at the bottom of the list in BC, and that jumped up 16 points this wave. So, it does seem like there is some growing resentment there that, could be problematic given they're heading into an election year for the government there.
In your conversations with Canadians, do you have a sense as to what they feel good about?
Well, I mean, look, we do ask on all these questions, are you happy or are you angry? And we just get very few people who say they're happy about government or the economy or things like that. I mean, we did ask about the federal government, about the federal budget on this wave of research, and people were pretty happy about the actual measures that were in the federal budget. Still pretty angry with the federal government overall. Maybe that hasn't changed things, but I do think there are things people can look at and say, look, I'm glad someone's doing something on this front when it comes to housing or food programs. So maybe there's still an opportunity there for people to feel those emotions.
No way people are saying that piece of good news is they're happy with the federal budget. But anyways, I am a real estate agent in London, Ontario. Reach out to me if you do want to work with my team all the way across Canada. I have my link below. We can hand select somebody for your area. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.